hire some of these architects for a specific purpose or a specific idea. What we try to develop within Aedas is it's almost like a university of knowledge. By going into the countries, understanding the culture, understanding the people, the client's demands, we try and basically become much more sensitive. We don't look to know how to design for the world. A piece of architecture that is correct in Singapore isn't necessarily correct in India. So one of our strengths, I think, is having this large team of people, very international, very cosmopolitan, that can bring that diversity, and that when we talk to a client, we can bring the right people to the client and come up with interesting solutions. There isn't one solution that fits all. I don't think stylised architecture is necessarily the way to go. Quality, international ideas, pushing boundaries, use of new materials, for example, that's all part of it. But saying that there's a stylised architecture that fits for every country, I think is the wrong way. It's not something that's our philosophy or approach.
Yeah, I understand.
And even within India, for example, what we found is India is so diverse that certain ideas that work, for example, in Chennai, don't work in Ahmedabad. Layouts, cultural, vastu, they don't apply. So you have to understand that to be able to respond. So I think the challenge as well is when we look at our project, things like retail, the way that retail is done here, the types of brands, the type of experience. Again, unless you are here and understanding that, it's very hard to be able to design. And I think that's the key challenge for today's architects, is to relate to site-specific, environmental, and bring creative solutions.
Sure. When you started, and when you visited the site initially, what was your first idea, understanding the brief?
Again, I think it was a long time before even getting to the site was my arrival into Ahmedabad, looking at what was happening along the riverfront, the reclamation and the enhancement. And straight away you could see that as a city, it was fairly low density, low rise, but the idea of public space, public realm was important. And also some of the architecture that's around is bringing some of the international ideas in, so there's a desire to respond and adapt. So that's one thing that encouraged me when we came to the site, was straight away there was already the starting blocks.
Yes.
And then when we saw the site, the Venus ground site split over the two plots of land, basically allowed us some creative freedom. It allowed us to think outside the box, both location, connectivity, but also to look at, for example, office. How does office culture work both here and internationally? We're seeing the market changing. We're seeing the idea of people sitting at a desk and being locked in is different these days. Wi-Fi, internet, people want to be able to just take 10 minutes from their desk, go downstairs, have a coffee, but maybe continue working. So the idea of this flexi hours, flexi working, not necessarily confined to a desk, that's what started to drive us towards that sort of design and ideas.
So how did you start the design? I mean, there's one part of saying that people work in the office, sitting on the desktop every time. So that that is how you started understanding what can be the difference of that working culture and what can be given into the new design?
Again, I think what was interesting is to see the current clients' properties, how they're used, the idea of the smaller divisible units. But it's also interesting, many of the meetings and workshops that we had, that idea of breakout space, of being able to have these conversations now. Traditionally, a lot of that was done maybe in hotels,
Sure.
but people want to have that space now. And the challenge is always, do you give up that space within your office to have these breakouts, meeting rooms and spaces, or do you create something that's more central, community-based? So that was our strong idea, is because of the climate, the high temperatures during the summer, we wanted to create a space that people could meet, congregate, have coffees. a lot of countries that could be outside or as a plaza.
Yes, yes.
The challenge here was because of the climate and the dust, we couldn't do that. So that's where straight away the idea of the atrium and this large community space came about. And then the idea of the wrapping around that courtyard then was more of an influence of looking at the size of the units, the views towards the unit, and also the environmental aspect. We were very keen to create natural daylight coming in, but also we were concerned that with the heat and everything, how do people feel, how do perceive the comfort? So orientating it on the direction we had, having the north-facing skylights, that was all part of the design intent very early on.
So do you see that atrium as a key element for this project?
Absolutely. I think for me, it's the key selling point of the project, is not only are you providing an office space for someone, but you're providing a public realm where they can break out, they can have coffees, we can go downstairs and have an informal chat. Sure. I can take my laptop. I can take my laptop downstairs, work for 10 minutes, have a break and come back up. And these are the latest trends, around the world. Flexi-hour working, fitting in around, for example, children's schedules, etc. Not necessarily having to work in an office. If you want to take private phone calls, you can do that. So the technology is allowing us to break away from the traditional office. And I think this building will create a new identity and a new way of working here.
I agree.
Working with the clients, day one, you could see that they were looking for new ideas. They were looking for something that hadn't been done or to bring something new to the city. So I think that in itself is a credit to the project and to the team, is that openness and desire to create was there in the beginning. And then along with that, the support of your local team, the structural engineers, again, thinking outside the box, coming up with new ideas. We've got a very large atrium glass, and how to hang that structurally is a challenge. So the way that we like to work is, rather than just come up with the solution, it's a workshop environment.
Yes.
So together we've had a number of workshops where all the consultants input, and that's how I like to work. It's not a case of just the solution. We can study different options, come up with the best solution, both for the client and architecturally. And so I think where we are today is a credit to the whole team of doing that. The collaboration between everyone with a clear focus on what we're trying to achieve.
Yeah. So how was your experience on that? What is it a good standard of understanding of each other at every level? Say the local levels, or the cerebral level, or the structural level, MEP level.
I think it was. I think there was possibly a learning curve in the beginning to understand that we are not trying to come up with the final solution, but I want them to come back to me as an engineer, but to design. The atrium, for example, was a big challenge in terms of how do you supply air into a very large volume. And the original direction was we want to air condition the entire volume. Whereas what we've done is we've challenged that and said, well, what if we just air condition the lower level, where people, where we sit now, we feel comfortable sitting. If at the higher levels it's reaching 40 degrees, that doesn't particularly matter. So it changed their approach, their strategy, and they were open to that. They did a lot of the analysis and modelling, and to get the result we've got today.
Great.
Sounds good. Sounds great.
So the concept behind the project is very much driven around the idea of community and atrium space. One of the things we're seeing within office culture specifically is that people no longer want to be chained to their desk. They want to basically engage, have dialogue, and a lot of business is done these days interacting. So the beginning of the project, we set out to create a space that could happen. When we looked at the atrium concept though, and especially the orientation of the building. The challenge was that although the people and the occupants of the office tower know the atrium space, how do we relate that to the outside people? You know, how do they drive past the building and know that there's the atrium and that space there? So what we wanted to try and do is create this new window, a window into the space that could be both seen from outside and also inside. The idea behind the window was to create a large facade, and what we want to encourage is to engage with some of the local art, either through lighting or installation art, to create something that hangs within that space that can basically glow at night and becomes a focal point of the whole project. People respond to as they drive past the building and say, wow, what is going on in that space? You know, let's go and have a look. And I think that's something that we set out early to do with this atrium design, and hopefully that will be encouraged and brought through. The other aspect of the atrium is how do we create people and bring people up to the space. And again, what we've tried to do there is within the office lobby, we've created this green wall. So again, from an environmental point of view, it's creating a new experience. As people enter into the building, they see this green wall, the atrium space, the public realm, and that will basically introduce them to a new way of working.
Venus Ground is a very strategically located development in Ahmedabad, which is near to the Nehru Nagar Circle on main BRTS road. When this project came to us from the Venus Group, we started working on it with understanding of the local need and understanding the project brief from the client. And yeah, it's completely a complex which will have office buildings, retail, mall, theaters, food courts and cinemas and lot more. When we started doing the initial thought process and when we interacted with the client on the initial meetings, we thought that these can be a landmark for the future of Ahmedabad. And thinking on those lines, we thought of taking principal ideas from the international firms to create a completely out-of-the-box building. After doing a lot of research from the Venus team and us, we finally started working with Aedas on this project as the principal architect, and we were the architects here, making them understand about every nitty-gritties of the retails, sales, understanding of the bylaws and local contextual ideas. And we started as a team to venture on this new iconic building. Venus came up with a lot of ideas initially and many options of different kinds. And finally, after a lot of interactions and workshops, we decided to go with a completely envelope of a box, in an office building where the inside was always more important than outside. So Aedas came up with an idea of creating an interactive space, which is like an atrium for the office building, which was never there in Ahmedabad, where people just simply hang out, have discussions, have debates and everything. Small coffee shops and have a lot of internal seat outs where people don't not only work inside the office premises, but they have a breathing space to go move out and have a lot of chit chats during the day, after the day, and also in the late nights. The space of the atrium becomes so important not only for the building but for the city that people really want to go and sit and hang out there. This was a very intelligent idea, which was of interactive space, and that's how the entire project revolved around it in terms of design development. And yeah, it was nice working with the international companies like Aedas, and especially when we were discussing with the Simon, who is the principal architect in Aedas and one of the lead associates. We exchanged a lot of many ideas, and there were a lot of things which we interacted, and they were also very open for understanding the real estate of Ahmedabad. And for instance, there was they had kept the offices which are opening on the outside as well as in the atrium, where they both were more or less on equal size. And we suggested them, that still in Ahmedabad will feel that inside offices opening in the atrium will be probably less important. So why don't we take a higher risk? And then we just suggested them to reduce the sizes of the offices which are opening into the atrium. And yes, they accepted, and that's how, as a team, it was very healthy relation throughout the journey, and that's why, as a result, we are coming up with a product which is absolutely international, and it has a very innovative ideas. Yet it has a cultural sense of as an Ahmedabad or India, where we always believe that interactive space is utmost important in any kind of development, and that's what is happening. They are moving the street inside the building, and looking at the temperature of Ahmedabad, this street is air conditioned street, where people are at their own comfort. People have their own areas to sit, discuss. It's a Wi-Fi zone. People can just browse on the internet, on their iPad or mobiles. They can have coffees, they can have snacks and whatnot. And that's how, this idea, then we went on refining with Aedas, and of course with the help of other consultants like MEP and structure and other consultants on landscape. So as a whole, this is one of its kind building to the city. And the way Ahmedabad is one of the fastest growing in city of the India, needs this kind of landmark buildings in future to come. Yeah, so we kept refining the entire concept with Aedas, and it was a very good teamwork. Ahmedabad as a city, of course, needs this kind of iconic buildings in future, as Ahmedabad is one of the fastest growing city in India, and we can see a lot of this kind of good buildings happening in Ahmedabad as an iconic structure, which will of course not only change this architectural language of the city, but also will have a different culture altogether.